Hey guys, my name is Vin Sykes. I'm Director of Development here at IndySoft and thought we'd do a Tip Tuesday today just on some options in the software we have for selecting default masters, seeing those within an event, adding those in, and then look a little bit at the equipment categories option that we have related to the selection of masters. So let's dive in here. So we're talking about our default masters and how these are used in the event system here. Some of these options you probably already know, but maybe you haven't yet looked at the equipment category options here. So to review, you can add in a default master just by selecting that by name. So that's going to filter it by the masters that are in your current company for masters. So that would be the company that owns this current asset, or if you have a default master company set up in your user location settings, that will give you the filter for those masters. But sometimes you might want to select across companies, so you can do that, and that'll give you a listing of all the masters across all the companies in the software. Just double click on that to select it in. Third option that you have here is for adding a default master using an employee filter. So that goes back to user location settings. So in user location settings, there's a master equipment list. So for each user and each location for that user, you can have an optional equipment filter box that lets you specify a filter to point back to all the assets, the masters that are currently in your possession. So you could say maybe everything that's owned by John Doe, my current login, and is a master. However specific you'd like to be to point to that grouping of assets, the masters that are currently with you. So if you have that set in user location settings, then you can go to this option here and say, add a default master from my master equipment listing, and then it'll give you a search by that filters that out. So just double click on these to add them in. So one quick note on that. So if you have this master filter that's set up in user location settings, then when you get into the equipment category concept that we're about to talk about in a second, then this same master equipment filter is also going to be applied to that equipment category. So don't let that be confusing to you. That's meant to be helpful. So you could combine those filters if you'd like, but just know both of those are going to come into play. So I'll leave that in place for now so we can see it demonstrated this first time, but then we'll remove it here in a second. So currently I'm filtered in my master, so I only want to pick from the ones that are belonging to John Doe as owner. So now let's look at this final concept here for equipment category. So this is a newer concept in the software. This points back to an add edit list that we have under system wide for equipment categories. So these equipment categories, you'll notice this comes pre-populated by IndySoft. So here we're trying to standardize a bit on a listing of categories that we think would be helpful for selecting in masters and other purposes uses in the software. So this is a fixed list from IndySoft. If you happen to have other items that you want to add into this list, these you think would be helpful, you can do that. Just press this insert button here, and then that would send the listing of the new item that you'd like included in this list to IndySoft. And if we approve that and add it in, then you can download that from this third button here, this globe, and then everyone will be able to benefit from that. So if you say yes, you can just give us the name of that new category in the email, and we could add that in. So each one of these items in the list, mainly it's just the name of the category, but underneath each one of these, you can see it points back to a filter box, kind of like we were using there in the user location settings for our master list. So in this case, we're just pre-populating each one of these filters that says the type field is either equal to the name of this equipment category, or the template name, like you have set up in Template Editor, is exactly the name of this category. So either way, you might have that set up already in your system, then that would be helpful for targeting you back to a master that would fulfill this general type category. If you want to improve that filter and make it a little more specific, maybe you track that in a different way in the software, you can modify any of these filters and save that, and that change will be specific just to your database. But for now, let's leave that as our default. So basically, this gives us just a quick way for selecting items that have all the same type or the same uh, template name. So we can find a master in the event. So as an example, like in my system here, I've set up a few items that have a type that links back to calibrator voltage, and these are set up as masters. So a quick way that I could associate a requirement for the usage of a voltage calibrator on a unit under test without specifying the exact uh, serial number of that voltage calibrator would be to use an equipment category. So if I go back to my asset here that I was using for unit under test, then let's add in a default master by equipment category. So here you just select your category from the list. So we were looking at a voltage calibrator. So once we've selected that from the list, then what's going to happen is when we get to the default masters or the masters step in the event system, like in our calibration event, it's going to note that we have an equipment category requirement and then pop up a search by to let us quickly select from all of the masters that we have in our system that currently match that filter. So let's demonstrate that here. So now in the calibration event, when I get to my specify master step, so this is where we would normally be automatically adding in all of our default masters that are listed by exact ID names into the event. But when we hit a default master requirement that is simply an equipment category, then we're going to pop up a search by and let you select from all of the masters that match that rule. So here you can see it's giving us automatically assembling for us a filter box that says everything that's a master in the system and has a type that's equal to calibrator voltage, or the template name is equal to that. And you can see in this particular instance, like I mentioned before, since I happen to be at a user in location combination that also has a master filter set up in user location settings, then it added that in also. So I think for that specific, I don't have any that match. So let me remove that that extra filter that I had for the master filter in user location settings. And now you can see I've got 4 items here that are listed in the software as being voltage calibrators. So I could just double click on those and add one into the event. And that's it. So you could do this for multiple requirements. So let me demonstrate here. Let me go back and remove my current master filter, just so that doesn't complicate any of this. So let's add in a second equipment category. So say we have a second master that's going to be required for this unit under test. And this isn't a good example at all, but I'll just do, let's do an audio analyzer here, along with your voltage calibrator. So that just means we need 2 masters selected, but they just simply need to belong to that category. So as you might expect, we'll get 2 search bys that are automatically prompted for us when we hit that step in the event. So we get to the specify master step. It hits this first requirement for voltage calibrator. So it'll pop up a search by and let us quickly select that item. And then it'll pop up a second search by and let us pick our audio analyzer. So now we've fulfilled both of the equipment categories that we need for our default masters. So you'll notice down here in this particular example, I have this asset set up also to calculate uncertainty. And for those of you that have used uncertainty, you'll know uncertainty budgets also have their own requirements for masters. So I just want to clarify that's a slightly different thing. So like back on the level of the uncertainty budget, this is the uncertainty budgets that I set up for this particular unit under test. And so it has 2 master rules. So each one of these master rules you can see also has its own filter box. So it's a slightly different rule. So what type of master is required in order for uncertainty to be calculated? Because your uncertainty budget might be used a little bit more widely than the master requirements on your particular unit under test. It's really up to you. So that's why we give you different filter boxes there. So the equipment category, if there's a filter box there associated, is going to quickly let you select the unit under the master when you're in the calibration event. But then when you hit your test points screen, then it's going to automatically validate those default standards that you've added into the event, match those to your master rule requirements on the uncertainty budget, and make sure that those are also tied in. So you can see down here, we've also got two rules there for our master requirements for uncertainty. So when we hit the test point step here, it's going to ask us to double check which of those masters that are already selected into the event match back correctly to those uncertainty rules. So it's going to try to guess those for you based on the filter box that's already set up. And if it finds a match, it's going to suggest that up here. So you can see it successfully matched both of those, and I agree with that. So we'll just say close. And now we're all set up to start entering our measurements here and calculate uncertainty. So that's really it. So those are the different options that you have basically in the event for adding in your masters. Just a couple extra ones that I'll mention that can be time savers for you. So let's go back into the calibration event here and go to our specify masters step here. So let me actually remove these just to demonstrate. So the only other options that you have in here are fairly new in the software, and you can add masters from your most recent calibration event or add masters from the most recent calibration event for the current user. So this is the most recent calibration of this asset, and this is the most recent calibration for the current user. So you can either select from those masters that were used most recently, or you can just automatically add them all in. And you could even do that with a keyboard shortcut of Control 4. So I already ran one of these calibration events earlier, and so you can see they're already ready to go from that from the past history of the event. So that just is a quick time saver for you. Same kind of option is available from the most recent calibration for current user. So if we say select, then it'll give us a quick grid where we can select how many of those we might want to automatically add in. All right, and so this is another quick way also to add from master type. So here we've got the two equipment categories that we listed here. So that's just a reminder that those are set up already. So if you want to add those in manually, so you deleted them once before, that's the second way to add those in. So lots of different options to add in your default masters into the event system as quickly as possible. Hope this has been helpful, and have a great week.